This is a big one. This is one of Mrs. Jax's favorite giant SUVs, and she's a big fan of giant SUVs. And I don't think she stopped talking about the Ford Expedition King Ranch that we had a few years ago early on in the channel ever since we had it to test, and she got to drive it to the beach. Well, guess what? Ford loaned us the 2022 Expedition, and guess where we got to drive it? To the beach again. So we got to take this one to one of our favorite vacation destinations, Highway 30A on Florida's Gulf Coast. And this is a more kind of, I don't know what you would say, popular XLT trim. I sort of called it a loaded XLT, so it's a little more mainstream than that King Ranch one that we had a few years back. Now, that means it rings in at $65,000, which was significantly cheaper than the King Ranch. So, does Mrs. Jax's former summer romance still hold up a couple years down the road after we've had some other vehicles to test? Well, let's find out. Now, what about the styling? Because the Expedition is the oldest of sort of the big three large truck-based SUVs, and I think that in some ways that's sort of good for the Expedition. I mean, honestly, the Expedition's always been a handsome SUV, and it's sort of almost conservatively styled compared to the Tahoe. Not that the Tahoe is wild or something, but the Expedition sort of truckish conservative styling looks pretty good still, even though it's the oldest one. And I think it looks better sort of overall than the Wagoneer, which looks good from the front, but sort of has dumps like a truck from the rear.
He had dumps like a truck.
Yeah, 90s people, you know what I'm talking about.
Okay, so I had the pleasure of taking the Ford Expedition to the beach for a week, and we drove, well, I drove 6 hours down, 6 hours back. And first of all, love the way it looks. Like, I love like a trucky truck. Like, I don't want a truck that looks, you know, oh, it's so pretty. No. I want it to look like a big truck, and that's what I feel like this does on the outside, especially. I love the styling. I love it. And I love this color. I don't even know what this color is, dark gray or something. But so that I was very satisfied with. I really, really, really like that way it looks. And I'm very picky about looks. The inside, awesome. I love the interior. It's very roomy. And I drive a Suburban as my daily driver. So I know what a roomy car feels like, but I felt like this was like even roomier. Like, I had room for my purse next to me. I just felt like, I've got a lot of space, which I loved driving 6 hours. So the seat was a little uncomfortable at about hour 5, but I mean, I think I would have been uncomfortable in any car I had driven. So the steering wheel feels awesome. Tons of room in the back. The kids had plenty of room. My 6'1", 16-year-old was sitting right behind me, and I'm 5'9", so it's pretty long. And I loved it. I can't complain. I would definitely drive it. Want to give me one?
I thought you wanted a Bronco.
Oh, I want that and this.
Oh, well, the channel needs to do a lot better. So.
Oh, and one more thing. The pedals were like a little high. Is that weird?
You can adjust them.
Why didn't you tell me that?
Well, because you went to the beach before me.
Okay. Well, the pedals were high, but you can adjust, so who knew?
I also think the interior holds up well. The materials are decent. You've got some, good leather, fake leather, soft touch plastics around. The harder plastics aren't necessarily offensive. The interior benefits from sort of Ford's expertise with these types of vehicles. The controls are all logically laid out and easy to access. Everything's exactly where you think it would be. The seats are supremely comfortable for longer journeys. Ford has been doing a really good job with seats lately. And, having had a number of vehicles at the end of the year, Sync remains one of the sort of most attractive, easiest to use. Like, when Ford went that route, they really did a good job because Sync is pretty great. And the wireless Apple CarPlay and the ability to see your sort of in-dash infotainment nav screen while you're in CarPlay, I mean, that's just a nice benefit when you've got Spotify playing or something. So I just like Sync's versatility, and I think the Expedition, even though it's getting on in years, has a very nice, comfortable, functional interior.
Okay, so the interior, I think is beautiful. The steering wheel is nice and big, like real, which is what I like. The center console, huge, has like the charging pad for my phone. It had the room for my cups, this little thing, which I don't know what it's for, but it was a nice little place to set my phone. The middle thing is huge and like real deep. You can like stick your whole purse in there. Plenty of room this way. The screen, you said this is not like the biggest one?
No.
But it's like a good size, and I thought it was really good. I like the dash. One thing, and maybe it's an option, I wanted like a camera to help me park. Is that an option that we don't have?
Well, it's got surround view, but not on this one.
Oh, because the front, I felt like it was like, I don't know, I'm used to driving a Suburban, but it felt hard like when I was parking. Like I was like, I'm not sure where the front of my, like I couldn't gauge it well. I don't know if that's because I'm sitting different than I'm used to, but so I would have liked that option on there. So for sure, if you're thinking about that, I would get that option. Feels luxurious. It feels nice when you get in and I'm walking up to it in the parking lot. I'm like, look at that good looking car. That's mine. Not really, but yeah.
So new Tahoe or Expedition?
Oh gosh. I have always been a Chevy girl. I might say Expedition.
You just like the King Range.
Oh, well, I do want the King Ranch. That's my favorite. That would fix those uncomfortable seats. King Ranch's seats felt like I was sitting in a lazy boy.
And rear seat passengers aren't hurting. You're not hurting in the interior for space. You're not hurting in the Expedition in general for space. The seat has been motored all the way back because this has the power memory seats, and I can still easily fit behind myself, and this is with the seat further back than I would have it. So I think in some ways the Expedition, because it's smaller than the Tahoe and the Wagoneer, is actually a more right-sized large SUV. It's just very easy to get comfortable in the Expedition because the seats are so good, the driving position is so good, everything is just within reach. I just like the interior. It feels like an F-150, and the F-150 is kind of one of the best laid out interiors in all of truckdom, and the Expedition picks up on that. I do think that the sort of analog gauges are pretty antiquated at this point, but you got a big digital display in between them. So I don't have any complaints for the Expedition's driving position or long haul comfort. It's pretty great. And remember what I said about the Expedition being a right-size SUV? Well, I think the interior kind of proves it. I mean, this standard wheelbase Expedition is 63 cubic feet of cargo space behind the second row, which is perfect for a family of 4 our size, especially because we don't have to carry all the little kid baby stuff that we used to when the girls were small. That makes it a lot more manageable than a more Titanic-sized SUV.
God himself could not sink this ship.
I mean, the Tahoe has a whopping 72 cubic feet, which is pretty nuts, and the Wagoneer has 71, and I think if 63 is enough for you, then it definitely makes the Expedition feel smaller than it actually is from behind the wheel, and some people might find that to be a benefit. So the XLT model comes standard with Ford's twin-turbo V6, making 380 horsepower and 470 pound-feet of torque. And that's running through Ford's 10-speed automatic transmission. And in this model, it's hitting the ground via, well, two-wheel drive because you have 4 high, 4 low, but you also have 2 high. So you have the ability to turn 4-wheel drive on and off. And that makes this a pretty versatile cruiser, and it's not wanting for power. Now, in terms of driving, if you want some more detailed driving impressions from my side of things, then you can check out the King Ranch review in addition to what Mrs. Jack said. But I think it drives just like all of Ford's trucks, to be honest with you. It has sort of a comfortable ride quality over larger dips and bumps, but it gets a little brittle. You feel a little bit more of that road texture on sort of uneven surfaces or badly paved roads, right? And another thing that I notice is that the off-road sort of biased 4-wheel drive tires seem to make it slightly more noticeable. Now, this is a big truck. Are you really gonna care? Probably not, and it's definitely never wanting for power. It doesn't really come with much of a gas mileage benefit though. I've had the tank on sort of, I refreshed it the minute we got the vehicle, so we drove highway miles all the way to Florida, a little bit around there, all the way back from Florida, a little bit back and forth to work, and the average mileage was about 19.5 miles per gallon. So there's nothing wrong with this powertrain. It's fantastic for a base powertrain. The torque is massive, but you're not gonna save much gas, and you definitely should expect this thing to ride like the truck that it is.
Okay, so it drove great, very smooth. The steering was good. There were a couple times like I felt the brakes were like a little jumpy. Is that what you call, like when you press it and I kind of like,
They're a
oh.
little touchy.
Yeah, like a little touchy. There you go.
So
That's
is
the word I was looking for.
the gas too.
Yeah, I thought it was a little touchy, but nothing that I would be like, oh, I'm not buying this car for. The side mirrors had the little thing that comes on to say, hey, there's a car there, which I thought worked perfectly. I mean, it was just I had a very smooth trip all the way down. It wasn't so comfortable that I was like, I'm gonna fall asleep, but it wasn't uncomfortable except for the very end. But you know, I'm old. What are you gonna do? No, I loved it. I thought it drove very well. Much smoother than my 12-year-old Suburban. You wanna give me a new car, honey?
So this Expedition costs just over $65,000, and I like to think of it as sort of like a loaded XLT trim. It's giving you a lot of what you want, and there's nothing wrong with the XLT trim. It looks good enough. The wheels aren't cartoonishly large. It's got a lot going for it. It kind of makes sense to me, to be honest with you. The XLT trim with these higher option packages gives you a lot of what you want. It's got heated and cooled seats with memory. It's got a heated steering wheel. It's got 4-wheel drive, which is a nice benefit. It feels like it's hitting a sweet spot of sort of premium features in a sort of mainstream trim. Now, personally, I prefer the Tahoe's ride and handling balance, but to spec out a Z71 Tahoe with kind of the things that would really set it apart, namely the magnetic shocks and air ride, would set you back another couple $1,000s. And I could certainly see a number of people choosing the Expedition's sort of classic good looks and lower price with a lot of choice options, as opposed to something that costs nearly $70,000, like the Tahoe Z71, which is actually a little bit more because I tested it a year ago, and thanks prices and inflation, but you get what I'm saying. So as I always say, should you buy a Ford Expedition in XLT trim with this sort of option set? Well, I think a lot of people would buy this vehicle, mainly because you get a lot of what you want and nothing that you really don't need. And the Expedition being the oldest of the large SUVs with another one on the horizon means that as the market sort of begins to stabilize, finally, you might actually be able to find some deals on these. And dealers, when the new ones do roll out, will be willing to maybe negotiate a little bit. So if we can expect a new Expedition as a 2024 model, I think is a safe bet, then that means these 2022s and 2023s might be able to be had at a much more reasonable price than some of the newer mainstream SUVs. Like I said, given the choice, I'd probably go with the Tahoe, but I think Mrs. Jax could be convinced to get the Expedition. That is assuming that she doesn't give in to that Bronco Everglades trim in Area 51 color that she has her eye on, but in order for that to happen, this channel's gonna have to do a lot better. So on that note, please share this with anyone who might find it useful. Thanks so much for being here. If you're new, consider subscribing, consider liking, and again, please share because Mrs. Jax wants a Bronco Everglades trim and that ain't happening anytime soon. So I appreciate you being here. I hope you found this useful. If you did, I hope you stick around. And if you do, I will see you in the next video. All right, drive safe. Peace.